Okay, hi everybody on live stream and elsewhere in the world. And it's Tuesday, Keshe Plasma Reactor Group night. And yep, I'm your host, Rick Cremond. And we'll have a couple of hours of who knows what, because I never do. But we do rely on our friend Lee Coates here to entertain us and tell us what's going on. So I'm going to spotlight his video, and he's got a big jar of gooey looking stuff here, and either he's been out milking the cow or he's got some kind of gans, I suspect.
Well, thanks, Rick. Over the last, I guess, 4 weeks or so, we've been spinning ping pong balls and plastic balls and a glass with lead gants and CH3 gants in it, and everyone in the house seems to be getting sick on me, including me, coming down with cold or whatever. It's the wrong time of year for cold, so I was wondering if I quit spinning lead gants, basically. I was wondering if that's been draining us of our positive energy. So on Saturday, I decided to make up some antiviral soup here. So what you're looking at is coconut oil gants, and I got CO2 and zinc gants mixed in with it. So hopefully, I was hoping it'd have antiviral properties, and I've been.
No, do you have a copper oxide?
Not in this one, no.
If you have copper oxide and CO2, just put a few drops of water, CO2, and copper oxide in a cup and drink it.
Yeah, I don't know about the lead gans causing an issue. I've got
lead
balls of lead gan spinning here as well, and it's not affecting myself or my dog in any way right now.
A lot of people have complained about that, though. That's something that that I've heard many times, and don't know. It would depend on the particular concoction, no doubt. But some people definitely seem to be having a response to the lead gans. And, any other comments about that?
Huh?
What do you think, Armin?
I don't think so. It's psychological point, I don't think any gans is affecting, If it's in plasmatic state, why should it affect your body?
Because your body's in a plasmatic state.
Okay, but it takes what it needs.
Yeah, once you're in plasmatic state, Rick, you can't force the energy on anyone. It doesn't work that way. It's not like swallowing a pill where you're obligated to go through the effects of the pill. It's just the energy is there, and if you want some of it, you'll take it. If you don't, you won't.
Your body carried lead.
Well, it could be just circumstance.
Oh, it could be chemtrail fluid too, Lee.
Yeah, it could be. Not sure how much chemtrailing they're doing here up in Calgary, but they're chemtrailing everywhere else.
Well, I've just been seeing a bunch of reports of all kinds of fires and stuff going on in Calgary. So there's chances are you got a ton of pollution up there.
What I was going to suggest, yeah, there's forest fires in BC, then the winds blow over Calgary and so on, and definitely they're having a hard time in Fort McMurray area with all that. The pollution from the burning is so bad there.
Yeah, well, that's mostly moving off to Saskatchewan. So
the main substance that they're dealing with is arsenic in the dust and the fallout from the burning. Basically, all the ash is heavy in arsenic, such that everything that's ash is basically off limits, and they have to contain it by pouring this concrete-like substance on top to keep it from blowing away.
yeah, I was talking with my roommate here that was renting my room. He's worked up in Fort McMurray, and he says the air up there is just terrible. Lots of times, and all that stuff falling out of the air, getting into the trees and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's
not
it's
good.
it's a major issue. I'm hoping that it's something that people involved with the Keshe Foundation Canada, hopefully we can come up with some sort of solutions for those kind of situations, because this will not be the last time that towns will be burning in northern Canada, because the ground's drying up. Basically, it's becoming a drier climate year after year, and it's hotter, drier, windier, stormier, and all those conditions lead to more forest fires. And it's going to be a big issue, I think, in the up and coming, you might say. So if we can provide products, like for example, even in right starting from the beginning with the spraying of the fire retardant. The fire retardants and toxic stuff. They shouldn't be spraying that on places where people exist and other life forms. It ends up, getting into the water supply, and you have a toxic water supply then, which is happening in Fort McMurray and other areas. So, what if we had some sort of a GANS type fire retardant? Maybe it turns out that CO2 GANS is the perfect fire retardant. For example, what did they use in most fire extinguishers? CO2. So maybe it's not only better but cheaper to use some kind of GANS like a CO2 GANS, and maybe it'll be contributing to helping the environment rebuild in terms of you spray it on and it helps the new growth occur more quickly and the roots to get established and that kind of thing, which we know the CO2 GANs can also do. So maybe there's some sort of opportunity there. It could be easily a multi-million-dollar opportunity just in that one aspect alone. And then you get into other parts of the fire situation, like, for example, treating people that are burned in a severe fire situation. It's obvious that CO2 GANs patches and pain pens and health pens and so on are all beneficial toward that kind of situation. Probably one of the best materials in the world to use for burnt skin, I think. Judging by what it does with my sensitive skin, which I'm very happy with the way the CO2 GANs heals and prevents irritation from the skin. Then we get into other things, like what about the decontamination issues? Well, geez, we've got products for that have been tested and other tests that need to be done. They're looking for, decontamination on a massive scale for the ground, the water, the air, the three major aspects of everything we do in life. So, I mean, there's huge opportunities there as well. Plus, we've got government grants and so on that's happening now with both recovery for Fort McMurray, and there's other grants through other agencies and so on, other monies being liberated. So there should be an opportunity somewhere there to respond and come up with tests and systems that might work more efficiently than what are currently out there.
There's also the concept of the tuned materials magnet. Like for arsenic, for example, if we could come up with the proper mixture for a magnet for arsenic, we just draw it right out of the environment.
Yes, exactly. It could be spraying on some sort of GANS material rather than this concrete sort of stuff that immobilizes the ash, but it doesn't do anything to actually remove the materials from it. They still have to bring in the guys in the overalls and respirators and the full coverage in order to clean up these burnt areas. And there's special agencies.
I've got a group down in Peru that are working with swaths, 10,000 acres that's contaminated with mercury from the old mining operations.
Exactly.
And they've been running
to
me, we know you can make a magnet, tell us how to do this. And I'm driving me crazy because I can't help them. I don't have the tech.
Well,
I
the
don't even know
same
where.
thing exactly is happening up in northern Alberta, was it? Or is it Saskatchewan with the native reserve? Or no, it was
Hmm.
Manitoba or maybe Ontario. It's native reserve that's got high mercury. And it's been that way since the 1960s from the mill that was there. And it's not going away. In fact, it's getting worse. And they're having birth defects and all kinds of issues. And it's a massive cleanup. They figure it'll cost $25 million, and they don't know if that's going to clean it up. And they have to clean up the entire river system, try to get it at source, and it's gotten into the silt and down into the. Now they don't want to disturb it. This is the rationale of the government is first they didn't want to deal with it and thought it would just go away and flush out on its own. And now since it didn't flush out, it's built up in the sediment. They don't want to disturb the sediment because that'll release it into the environment and make the situation worse. So
Yeah.
due to the inaction, now they can't take action in a way. But this is where maybe the Keshe Foundation can get a foot in the door and be able to, with the right contacts, we might be able to do some testing and find out if some of the products we have are actually more effective than what's available on the market.
Yeah. Yeah, Armand, if there's a group in the foundation that's working on that type of cleanup process, can you get them to get a hold of Rick or myself so we can at least offer some sort of help to these people? Because there's hundreds of thousands of people that are affected by this, and if we can solve it easily, I think we have a duty to do so.
I really don't know the groups that they are working on it, but I know that the people that we are working with, they want to present this to our American government for cleanup.
I like I say, I've got a large group down in Peru that's ready to move ahead as soon as we can offer them the technology, and they've got financial backing to make it happen right away. So if they're looking for a test bed, I can offer them a massive, huge test bed.
Okay.
Can I come in
We
here?
have a meeting with them on Zoom.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Didn't the Fukushima, hello everybody, didn't the Fukushima tests, didn't they turn the mercury into gold using the CO2 water?
It's not mercury.
It's cesium.
Oh, okay, but there was mercury, wasn't there mercury involved in that somewhere? Oh, okay. Sorry.
If I recall, Mario, what Mr. Keshe mentioned the first time this came up when he was describing it was that it's entirely possible to make a magnet for cesium, and you simply put them in the ocean and they suck the cesium right out of the water. And then it moved on to actually treating the source of the waste, and that's where they're at now. And it's this magnet that I'm interested in, because we can't, when we're dealing with 100,000 acres of contaminated land, we can't process the land. We have to have something that will work over extreme distances. And if I recall what Mr. Keshe was saying about the original cleanup of the cesium, that's exactly how these work. It creates a magnet and it just draws it in from miles away.
This is the reactors which going to come in play.
Yeah.
This is next stage. That all we do right now, we use still matter to convert the fields.
Right.
Later on, we will use the fields to create the environment.
Yeah. And I can see the concept, I can see how it would function, but I don't even know where to start to make it happen. So I need somebody who's smarter than me to step in.
Right now, the GAN's energy is more sufficient, which we see it. Which we can make a mixture and, let's say, clean up lots of radioactive waters, just let the water to just go through the GANs.
Mm-hmm. But how would you do that with say 1,000 acres of sand?
That's why it's going to come, to play the reactors, which you can set up in that territory, which will do the job.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you don't need to have gas and water, and you just can set it up the reactors in parameters, let's say in several miles, that they can clean up the whole territory.
Or what would even be better is if we could just add a proton to it and turn it all into gold.
Then you can use to convert to other material.
Certainly.
There is no waste in the universe.
No. And there's really no destruction in the universe either. There's conversion from one thing to another. That's all.
So slowly we will come to that point that we will set up reactors for our all needs.
There was talk, someone mentioned converting mercury into gold through process using microwaves.
You can do different. You can see, if you have a box and your CO2 box, you can create a flow through it. Here. See over here? This is all my CO2 box. There's a hole here. And there is a hole here. So I have a pump, which all the hoses are nano-coated. So what I'm trying to do, this box holds plasma, and it's CO2 filled mostly and a copper filled. So if you pass the air through it, you create a flow. Now your medium is air, not water. Correct?
Yes. One other question, just a clarification. Is it correct to assume that to contain the fields, we put them in a nano-coated environment, and to dissipate the fields, we put them in a plain matter environment? Is that correct? Is that
matter absorbs? Correct.
Okay.
You remember we had the old boxes and we never continue it. The diamond shape.
I don't remember. Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Created that for a purpose. But it's never been continued, so we just stopped it for a moment. Also, your two boxes. You want to show you? I'll show you. The shape for it. Here. Diamond shape.
Yeah, you're trying to make a crystal. Is that right, Armin?
We try to make everything. Show how it's done. Yes.
But to contain, if you're making the CO2, that's carbon. I was looking at the structure of it. I mean, I can't help but looking at my reactor array that it's a crystal inside a crystal inside a crystal, which is exactly what a diamond structure is, right? So you have to contain the CO2 with fields so that instead of it being free floating in the water, it will crystallize. Is that right? Is that the right idea?
Yeah, correct. Because in the air is your medium too. You can create same condition what in the water you are creating, same condition you can create it in the air.
But then you still
In
have to
the
contain
environment. Let me put it this way. Environment. You are wherever you are, that's your environment. Correct? If you have a box of, plastic box, closed plastic box, that's your environment. So in your environment, you created a field of CO2. So if you pass the air, and let's say you pass the poison air to other end, what air it will be? Can you clean up when you pass through the box?
Right, should do the same thing as it's doing with Fukushima or whatever. It'll decontaminate it or whatever, right?
Now you're doing with the air.
Right.
Air is like a water, but in different state. You have hydrogen in air, you have everything in air, what you have in the ocean and on a landscape.
You're making me want to spray down the screen of my cooling fan with CO2 GANs now.
Listen, here, this is different.
But in order to create the crystals, the hard matter level crystal, you still have to clean it.
Look at this. Look at this one. If I fill up water, half of the water of any mixture of GANs, when you breathe it, you breathe the field of it. You can do any mixture and you breathe. It's an instant transfer.
That's a whole new use for a bong.
Yeah. I'm telling you. Because you put a mixture of gas water over there, the fields, you breathe it. Because you bring the air to the water of the gas. So that air you breathe is gonna contain whatever mixture you put in your water medium.
Okay, but I'm still interested in if I need to make a crystal, matter level crystal for my reactor, how do I contain the fields to, just in a plastic bucket is not going to be enough to contain the fields. I have to do something.
When I finish up, I'll let you.
Sorry?
When I finish up, I'll let you know. I'll show it to you.
Okay. I've been trying to do some experiments and not getting anywhere really. I mean, I made.
Well, Mario
grow in the air, correct?
Sorry.
Crystals grow in under the ground. Let's say. Yeah. So you see it grows. So how you can create a condition which you have to contain it, but you need the flow of the air. If you have air in there, so it's still going to convert the CO2 into the matter level, as you see it's doing in the water. Now the medium is changed, water become air, but you still need the flow of the air.
Okay, so you need to pump air through it basically, or just leave it?
I'm trying to understand myself.
Okay.
Also, Mario, you've been working with this grid system for quite some time. Perhaps the points of intersection of the fields of the grid are the actual container points, you might say. Your grid is the fields, the overlapping fields become the container, in effect. And you use this grid that shows the overlapping fields. So in effect, you have all the points there, perhaps, of where the Coulomb barrier would be, and so on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking at looking at the diamond structure. It looks like my reactor. I was thinking maybe I can contain the fields on the inside one by putting some kind of GANs or nanomaterial in the second pyramid, so to speak, because that way, yeah, it's where the points of the crystal are. But it's still dealing with. I'm not sure how to do that actually.
Mm-hmm. So
You have your
details.
nanomaterial. What is your nanomaterial made of?
Well, matter plus the crystal.
No.
Crystal.
1 minute. Hello. Rajan, it's meeting image. Okay, sorry. Hello.
Hi.
Just tell her you love her, Mikey. That's from a movie.
What your question was? I'm sorry.
Well, to contain the crystal, you need to contain it somehow with fields. So, I mean, Rick was saying, like, the reactor I have is a crystal inside a crystal inside a crystal. What you got there?
Okay, here's the box.
Right.
We know we created CO2 in here.
Okay.
So it carries the field of the CO2. It's been nano-coated a long time ago, and it's been GANs-coated. If you see, you still have a GANs inside.
What kind of GANs?
It's a CO2 box.
Okay.
This one you see, it's a copper plate which was attached a little bit. That's why you see a copper particles in here. But this one is CO2. So we have a already carbon structure in here in a plasmatic condition. If we create a flow of the air, so what's going to be created in the box?
Is it possible? I tried putting a little ball. I filled it with. I nano-coated it, and I filled it with liquid CO2, and then I emptied it, and I put that in a container that I had made CO2 with. I thought that might be enough to draw.
No.
Yeah, it's not. It didn't work. Yeah.
Well, there is an idea there though about seed crystals. That's how they create these giant diamond crystals. They use a pure tiny wee seed crystal, and they can grow diamonds inside a vacuum chamber, for example, with deposition. They can grow giant 20 centimeter single crystals of carbon diamond by using a seed crystal to start with. So what about that in terms of a CO2 GANs or the seed crystal of the water of the GANs, perhaps, to start the CO2 in a kit?
Need that nanostructure, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Because nanostructure, let's say of the carbon, let's say of the graphite, you can make a nano. I made nanomaterials from graphite.
Mm-hmm.
It's a graphite powder, but you can. I have a graphite list here.
Well, that's basically diamond, isn't it?
Graphite is a diamond, but different structure.
Yeah.
It's like layers and layers.
It's about it's the SP2 though, not the SP3.
SP2, but
right.
Not SP3. But the base is carbon.
Right. But you can change it into SP3 by certain processes. You could put that in a vacuum chamber and with some high voltage and zap it and vacuum it, and it would.
But you can do the same with bringing to the GAN state, then bringing to nano state.
Mm-hmm.
Because through nano you transfer to matter.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's a field, it's a GAN, it's a nano, it's a matter.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a nano, that means if you apply plasma, it will change because still it's in a plasmatic condition. We separate from the matter, it becomes separated to nano, then separated to gas. Now the same way you bring it back. If you have a nano, I think a nanoparticle of the seed, then you can grow on it. Because always you can see when you look to the diamonds, you can see that seed.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
always. Then the cutters, diamond cutter, it's a rough diamond. You can see the seed. And then the cutters cut the way that they don't touch the seed. If they touch the seed, they lose the whole uh, color.
Right. Yep.
So they be very careful. They open a window before they do any cuts on a diamond. They open a window, then they can look at it. They can see where is the seed is there. Then they can cut around it, or they can cut the way that they don't touch it.
Well, it sounds to me like I have basically the right idea with the seeding with the CO2. It's an empty ball now, so that should be a container. Maybe if I leave it for a few months or something, it might, I'm leaving tomorrow, I'll come back in a few months, I might find a diamond in the middle of the ball or whatever, but
You have to create a condition.
Yeah.
You have
First,
to-
How you
you
gonna
assume.
crystallize without air?
Yeah, you assume it's empty, but it's not empty at all. It's got air in it, but whether it's got the right
No, it's not
properties in
enough.
there.
You
Right.
should
see,
have the fields for the
when
CO2 in it because
when you produce CO2, when you don't change the water or don't add the water in time, your CO2 will stop to produce. It's correct because you use all the molecules of the, air in a water. So that's why the process is slower and slower. But if you change the water right away, you bring the same, production rate.
But it should be the same thing with the air. You don't need to change it because it's constantly in the air. There'll be the oxygen in the air
But
constantly.
if you have a chamber, in that chamber, you need to create the flow.
Is it possible? I was thinking about putting a copper plate underneath the container to create a dynamic flow.
No,
That might-
no, it depends.
It's going the wrong way.
Now, if you look at it, this is totally nano-coated box inside.
Right.
Okay, so if I impose another field, it depends from which side. So you can create different materials, but you need the air. You need the flow.
You have to have moving air. So we just you matter level air.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then that should contain it inside the container because it's nano coated. And you'll get a
When
crystal.
they charge, they oxidize. So what happens then? It's the same thing. You create the CO2 in there, but now you have an air for oxidization.
Okay.
Maybe you have CO2 crystals falling down.
I don't know how to do it.
CO2 snow.
Angel dust.
Well,
You remember that fairies? They have a dust, spraying.
Well, here's a way that some scientists did. So let me do a screen share here, and I wanted to show something that's interesting that came up recently.
Guys, I am so sorry. I gotta leave for half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. But I'll be back. If you will be online, I will join you soon.
Okay, thank you, Armin.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for your information. Appreciate it. Let me just throw this on here. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, this is an article that came up, dated back to February of 2016. And this is scientists guide gold nanoparticles to form diamond superlattices, diamond in quotation marks. And when we talk about diamond, when Keshe talks about diamond, he actually often indicates that it's the sp3 type structure, meaning the tetrahedral structure, not necessarily diamond, the material diamond itself. So anyways, these guys, it shows a great picture here that I'd like to bring up, which is they actually use DNA bundles to create a tetrahedron cage, and then they insert gold nanoparticles into the center of this cage and onto each vertice of the cage. So they form this diamond lattice from the gold nanoparticles that are held in place by the DNA bundles. So all this sounds kind of crazy and complicated in a way, but it's actually not that complex of an operation to do this. Apparently, it's not like they use tweezers and pull out each of these DNA strands to line these up and so on. It's more or less a self-assembling type of arrangement. I thought it was interesting that they were using DNA to create the structure of this particle structure, nanostructure, um, using essentially amino acids. When you think about it, DNA, amino acids, and we do have amino acids that are part of the CO2 kit and other arrangements of our plates and so on that can generate the oils that we see on the surface. And Keshe keeps telling us how we can use these amino acids. And I'm wondering maybe that they could be used for this kind of situation to create the structure for other processes to take place to end up with some sort of special surface or special plasmatic lattice, essentially diamond lattice, with the right spaces in between to create that plasmatic interface. It seems like it could be done. I know that they do create certain kinds of gold nanoparticles from amino acids on the surface of liquids like water, and other types of things can be created. Different chemical combinations can be created from the surface, the interaction of the surface of a fluid and the fluid itself with the air or other gases that are introduced above it and so on. So I thought I'd throw that in as a possibility. I mean, you look at the structure, that tetrahedron, and if it's that tetrahedron is the basis for your structure, and your structure looks like a tetrahedron when you're done, like yours does, Mario. It's a tetrahedron within a tetrahedron within a tetrahedron, actually. Then why not start with a tetrahedron to begin with to replicate on the micro and nano and macro level as well. So maybe you would have a tetrahedron spaceship when you're done, or a tetrahedron healing chamber, or whatever particular thing you were creating at the time.
They did not create new gold. They just realigned it in nano layers, basically. Is that correct? I think, yeah.
That's right. It's a caged nanoparticle, and it wouldn't even be a single atom of gold necessarily. It could be a 30 or 50 atoms together forming a particle. But the thing is, when a substance such as gold in particular, when it's in that nanoparticle state, it has entirely different tendencies than it would as the element gold. It no longer responds in the same way. You can get certain kinds of gold nanoparticles. You can get magnetic effects from that you can't get from the regular gold element and so on. There's all kinds of different things that gold nanoparticles can do. For example, they interact with the UV rays of the atmosphere of the sun, actually, and instantly neutralize pollution air particles. They've discovered this with, I've mentioned this before with, we're getting some interference here with somebody's microphone open. Maybe, perhaps yours, Mario. Yeah, thanks. I mentioned this before with gold nanoparticles that were used in the Middle Ages to make stained glass windows in churches. And it turns out the red color, they actually created back then gold nanoparticles that form the color red when they're of the proper size. The red color is an indication literally of the size of the nanoparticle, the gold nanoparticle. And they use that as the stain for the glass in the glass in stained glass windows. And it turns out they've recently discovered that when the sunlight goes through those stained glass windows, the gold nanoparticles are activated, and any pollution molecules that are nearby that window will get instantly annihilated from the because what happens with the interaction of the ultraviolet with the gold particle changes the oxygen into a free radical state, and the free radical oxygen atom is known to be able to rip apart virtually any molecule that's nearby, such as pollution and so on. And so essentially it ionizes the oxygen in the air just from the size of the gold nanoparticle. It wouldn't do it if it was just a gold color, or I mean a gold in the element state. It has to be in that nanoparticle and a particular size of nanoparticle in order for it to do all that action. So that's how this kind of lattice might be useful. Maybe this kind of lattice could pass air through, but it would neutralize any pollution particles in it, for example. Maybe we could use our amino acids to create a diamond lattice that I don't know, is particularly useful for our own health pens or health pads or something like that as well.
Does it mention how it was created? Hi, Rick. This is Mark from Detroit.
Hi, Mark. How you doing? Let me see. They employed a technique where they organize the nanoparticles into 3D spatial arrangements using the rope-like bundles of double helix DNA to create the rigid three-dimensional frames, and they added dangling bits of single-stranded DNA to bind the particles coated with the complementary DNA strands. So they basically made a scaffold. I'm not sure how they actually created the DNA, how they got the DNA bundles to make this pyramid structure.
Would it be in like a liquid form where they would be looking at it through?
I'm not clear on that, actually. They usually use what they call a scaffold, which is basically, it could be silicon oxide or some other type of substance that they can etch or make into little regular shapes, and that when the in this case the DNA, well, maybe they'll say something about it here. I mean, they talk about how they get the gold into the DNA strands. The gold has got two different DNAs attached to it, and depending on if it's a single strand or double strand, the double strand will go into the center of the tetrahedron cage, and the other one will, the single strands are on the vertices of the cage. So the single strand gold, it gets automatically attached to the vertices of the cage. So you have your gold that way locks into place, one in the center according to its attraction, and the other one's at the vertices according to their attraction. What's not clear to me is how they actually got the cages to be made to start with.
Well, those are two golden particles right there, the green one and the red one?
Yes. And these
So
have different DNA bundles attached to them.
Well, wouldn't that be the same thing like we just learned last week from Armin, who said take two gold plates, nanocoat one, and leave one raw, like those two are a positive and negative, right? Which would
Mhm.
create that structure, wouldn't it create? That's what I'm thinking, right?
Well, we
In our
might be.
box or our in our little experiment.
I'm not sure if it's going to create a tetrahedron cage out of the DNA that
Gold
would
on
be in there.
gold
You
on
know,
gold.
for example, if you spit into your gold and gold kit, nano GAN's creation kit, is that going to mean that they're going to automatically take these gold particles and put them inside a tetrahedron cage? I don't think so, but on the other hand, there are certain things like that that do automatically line up and do automagically basically set themselves up and into these arrays, these what they call a super lattice. It's quite interesting. Now they mention this lattice is it's the same arrangement as the carbon atoms in a lattice of diamond, but it's at a scale about 100 times larger. So that's interesting. It's quite a range. You could imagine other particles other than gold nanoparticles, and this scale of 1 to 100 times larger, let's say, than the diamond lattice, but still in that same diamond type lattice, diamond like lattice, you might say.
I was looking at that. If when I hear like they say single strand and double strand, I'm just imposing magrav. If the single strand is actually magnetic fields, and the double strand is actually magnetical and gravitational, they put the double strand, which has both, in the middle. That's holding the single strands, which are actually magnetical. So you have the magnetical on the outside, and you have a magnetical and a gravitational on the inside. So that's in effect holding the structure in place.
Wow, that's pretty insightful thinking there. Yeah, I could see what you're saying.
I mean, it looks like they're doing exactly what we're trying to do to create structure, a crystal containing the fields somehow. So that's interesting that they have magnetical fields on the outside, and I mean, if that's correct, I don't know. I mean, but
Well, you meant, yeah, well, in a way, I mean, we look at the double strand DNA, it's the two, um, two independent strands that are, wound in together basically. It's very similar to the way that Mr. Keshe draws the spiral maggrav drawing, of the magnetical and gravitational lines and so on. So yeah, it's interesting way to look at it.
so the answer is there, probably right there. We're looking at how to contain the fields. Still don't have it though.
Well, I mean, we've looked at this tetrahedron concept now for quite some time, in terms of like 4 reactors set up for each of the vertices of the tetrahedron, or for we talked many times about the free plasma that's created in the center of this tetrahedron, and we see that represented by this caged gold particle essentially. But this tetrahedron is such a core principle type shape. It's the most primary shape that's in 3 dimensions. It's taking a triangle, a flat 2 dimensional object, and flipping it up to become 3 dimensional, to give it that ability to take up what we call space and so on. And that seems important. That is the. I mean, you could have a four-sided pyramid, for example, or a four pointed would have 5 vertices, basically, a pyramid instead of 4. but that would be more complex. This is the simplest, most basic shape that pops up. This is the same, you know, the triangle and tetrahedrons and so on is the basic shapes of the images in video games and so on to build up three-dimensional shapes and so on. It's a primary, very basic geometric principle, and so it will apply to many different aspects of the universe, and this is one of them. Perhaps there's other ways that we can use the same principle as well, but I think that the idea that it's scalar and can reflect up into higher and higher levels, such that, you know, shapes such as we've used for the separate reactor setups, like we've mentioned, and different tetrahedral shapes, is got to be important. It's got to be, you know, the basic principles there all the way up.
Yeah, well, the flower of life drawings, everything is a tetrahedron. If you draw straight lines from everywhere, you can connect, you can find equal-sided tetrahedrons everywhere. I mean, it's, to me, it's an optical illusion seeing the straight lines. We see them as crystals. They're actually spherical because the fields curve. But if you connect them with straight lines, that's what Pythagoras did, basically. You know, he's the one who came up with the Pythagorean theorem using the harmonic overtones, oddly enough, the monochord, to get the Pythagorean theorem, you know? So that's definitely the basic structure of life, of everything. The amino acid is a tetrahedron, right?
Yes, right, and many of the basic, what is it, like, let me see, there's, I think it's like ethyl and methyl, and some of the more basic ones, let me see, such as acetylene is a very basic sort of tetrahedral structure as well. And that's what we find out in the universe, apparently, as some of the most basic particles are that tetrahedral shape. It's very solid, stable type of shape. You can see some of the links at the end of this paper to other things, interesting titles such as DNA double helix does double duty in assembling arrays of nanoparticles. Scientists use nanoscale building blocks and DNA glue to shape 3D superlattices, and so on. It's all about using DNA as a assembler to assemble these arrays, and you know, it's sort of a no-brainer in a way. It's like, why would you try to use tweezers and you know, electron microscope to move these little nanoparticles and try to line them up into arrays? It just won't happen. It's too massive of a job and too beyond our capabilities. But to allow something to naturally create these arrays of nanoparticles, something that we already have, such as DNA, that seems like a great. It's just an elegant way to do things, and I think that's somehow it makes sense to me that DNA is going to get involved in creating some of these arrays of nanoparticles that we use. And I mean, it is already. We give blessings to our configurations, to our reactors, to our GANs, and so on. And we put our actual DNA into it. You can't help it. Every time you touch a container, your fingerprints are in it and on it and become part of it. And our breath, we're breathing on these units and into them. We become part of this living entity, especially the certain types of GANs materials that are more closely related to our emotional aspects and spiritual aspects and so on. So essentially, we're using our DNA and all of our knowledge, which is embedded in our DNA as well, to create these structures that we already are creating anyway. Why not go a level deeper and actually use our DNA substance to create those structures? It kind of makes sense in a way.
Do you think it's necessary to actually use the DNA, not just the amino acid? Because it's basically the same thing, isn't it? I mean, without all the information, but I mean, as a frame for a lattice, you already have it there. So they're using DNA because they don't understand about the simplicity of amino acids the way Keshe people do.
Well, the thing is, they're assembling an array rather than individual nanoparticles, so perhaps it requires a more complex structure in order to assemble an array as opposed to just making one nanoparticle.
Oh, yeah, I see.
And they actually use the double and single strands as a binding factor as well, because it's an easy procedure nowadays to attach. I'm getting some feedback from your speaker.
Oh, sorry.
Someone there. Um, um, it's an easy thing, relatively easy thing these days to make. Any school kid now can make DNA. You can spit and there's a couple of chemicals you use or something, and you can make your own DNA at home, no problem. And so it's becoming more and more common to attach DNA in a lab process to different particles as markers and as tests and so on. So they can actually attach their choice of double or single DNA to these gold particles in this case. So there's one sentence there that kind of says it all. Multi-component nanostructures with tunable optical properties. Switchable nanostructures. So they're talking about making these very precise, tunable, switchable structures. It seems like it'd be great if we could have some DNA coating on our coils that was able to switch some aspect on and off on it to multiply the plasma and make it into an optical instrument rather than a electrical instrument, for example.
Rick?
Yeah.
Could I ask you, could you find your own personal DNA in your toenails and in your hair?
Yeah, that would be one place that definitely DNA is found.
In your hair and toenails?
Yep, it's got protein, it's got DNA. That's one. They use hair samples to, in crime scene things and so on. If they have a hair, they've got a sample of DNA essentially, and they can trace that back and so on.
So if we made a personal GANs of our own hair and nails, which I'm trying to do, well, I'm just getting started, but the things that you're talking about now are things I've been thinking about for a while, and that's what I thought. Like Armin said, if we could make a GANs, you can make a GANs of anything, really. So if you took, I thought to take the top of your hair from the core, right from your core, where the middle of the top of your head, and all your clippings of your fingernails from the ends of your fingers, the clippings from the end of your toes, made a GANs of it. That's you. That's you now.
Yeah, and then what do you do with you once you've made you? That's the question. What would you like to be done with you once you were made?
Well, once again, I'm working towards a personal StarCraft, a craft that's going to provide something for me. A unit. I want a unit that's going to first of all, provide me here on this planet right now, this day, as fast as I can get to, protection from the elements that are trying to invade me. So if I made a personal protection that knew me, which I'm trying to, that's my goal right now, is to try to make something that's going to know who I am.
Well, we're already in a way have created our body as a protection for our essence or our being.
Yeah, but I can't project. I can't make a force field around me to keep nuclear fallout or pollution to come in around me or my family or my home. So I think that is would be a nice harmonious field to build around, starting with me and then my house, my family, and then outward projecting. That would be my personal goal right now. That's one of my goals, is because when we first started, Mr. Keshe, Mr. Keshe's wife said, become personal with all your systems, whatever you start with. She said, work, put yourself into it. And then you got to think, well, when we first started, we were so novice. We cut our hands, we knocked the copper, we broke it, cut it. Now, like you said, we're intimate with this. Our fingerprints are on it, and we've already gone to a second level, third, fourth, fifth level of this now. But I still try to go back to the basics. And like she said, if you're going to start something, start it from the beginning, where the water that you create that's going to start the GANs, which is going to start everything, is the salt water. And I put my feet in salt water, the Himalayan salt water. I heat the water up real hot, as hot as my feet can get it, to where when I take my feet out of it, they're still red, which I transmit myself into that water. I'm sure my cells decompose, my energy from my feet, my left foot from my right foot, or both. Everything's in my foot bath, and I make 15 gallons of that. I have it all written down now. I didn't write anything down before. I didn't even know any. I'm trying to make a standard. That's why I went and bought on my Facebook I put up today. I finally could afford a pH meter. Finally, a good one.
Good.
A digital one.
Yeah, Mark.
Yes.
I did an experiment last year with the.
Hi, Mario.
How you doing, Mark?
Good.
When I first made the first reactor, when I was preparing the ganses, my gloves shredded, and I had my amino acids in the GANs, and I had a definite communication thing happening with the reactor. When we made a second set with Max, where there were no accidents and there were no basic amino acids, they made the ganses. It was their ganses, and they were very careful about everything, and there was no amino acids in it. And although I could feel the presence of the reactor, I mean, I was in it because I made the GANs. I prepared them, but my gloves didn't shred or whatever. There was no direct amino acids in it. I could feel it, but I was not in the communication with it the way I was with the first reactor. So when I did the third one, I just put some saliva on a glass on top of the GANs container and made CO2 and CH3, transferred the fields, and I definitely had a direct connection with the reactor. So, I mean, just some saliva, skin cells, whatever, as long as you get your amino acid into the GANs, you will have that connection. I mean, that was my experience, And even though I made we made the ganses, we prepared the balls and everything. When I assembled it, I mean, my hands were on it. I touched it with my hands, but it wasn't the same. So unless I directly put the amino acids in there, anyway.
Well, Mark, which experiment was the one that the ball? Goodbye.
Oh, Well, actually, both of them did that. But the first one, it was the first one. Yeah, they both. But later, I had it in a container because I was nano coating it, so they couldn't actually. But it was the first one that actually the one flew out the window and all that. Yeah. But I mean, there was a lot of things happening. I didn't understand what was happening because much of it was happening, and then Mr. Keshe would explain things a month later, and I would go, "Oh, is that what's going on?" And then I still don't know. There's always other possibilities that could have been whatever. I mean, the thing was spinning, but why would it start to lift up after a month of spinning? All of a sudden, now it's lifting up and sitting in the middle. You know, Mr. Keshe, like November, said, all you have to do is put your 3 base reactors and put the top one in the middle, and it'll position itself and things like that. I was like, oh, okay, maybe that was happening, but you know, I didn't document anything, getting videos of anything. I don't, you know, it's all memory, and it gets confused, and didn't know what was happening at the time, you know, and it's only later in retrospect, and it's, you know, that's not a very scientific method to go by as an experiment. So it's hard to say really what any of this was, you know. I mean, since last year, I mean, I alternately, I'm finally now coming to where I'm going, oh, okay, I'm believing it, but I alternated daily between, wow, this is really happening, and oh my God, I'm having a stroke, you know, hallucinating, you know. I mean, I went to bird flu, you know, whatever, you know, and then wow, this is really happening, you know, and then no, it's not. I'm, you know, better go get a checkup, you know. So, you know, it's only now because so many others have had so many kind of similar experiences that I was like, you know, when Ali was showing the shimmers and stuff, you know, I was living in the flat. When it first happened, it was not nearly as vivid. It was feeling and I could see. But when I was back in Shanghai and had 2 of them going, I opened the door. I felt like I walked into water. You know, I mean, it was so thick in the air and stuff, you know. And when I was watching Ali, it was in January. I forgot where I was, and he was like, wow, you know, describing it. I was like, oh, thank God I'm not going nuts, you know. Because at least Ali, he could say, you see it? You know, there's somebody else there. Yeah, you see it too? Yeah, okay, well, I'm not going nuts. But I'm not very rude by myself, you know, thinking, what did I eat today? You know, so it was a lot of that. And I still don't know what to make of a lot of the stuff that was going on and still going on, you know. But anyway.
Well, Mario, okay. I'm right with you. I didn't know anything about this stuff. I collected a lot of stuff. I'm kind of mad now that I threw a lot of stuff away, but I'm glad I did because it made me learn about a lot of stuff. But I know exactly what you're saying. When I'd walk into my room and be like a different, like a feeling, like you know, like when you look down a hot road and you see that wavy heat coming off the road. It wasn't, you couldn't see it, but you could almost feel like it was like, oh. I'd be like, man, what is going on here? And it kept on happening. You couldn't ask anybody. Who would you ask? Who would you go to? What would you say? Would you tell my neighbors, my friends? They're all like, dude, are you crazy? Stop doing that stuff. Throw that stuff away. And I did, but I learned. It made me learn. You have to learn. You experience and learn. And I'm very happy now. I'm way beyond that point now, and I'm enjoying myself again.
Yeah, you know, there's an old saying where they say, dude, it's all in your head. That usually means it's not true. But in this case, you know, if it's not all in your head, then it's probably not true. And so,
well, wait a minute. I'm 56 and I grew up in the 70s and I heard that my whole life. Dude, it's not true. Walk away, you know, but it's in your head. But not really. It's real. There's a lot of real stuff that's happening. And you can't take that out of account. You have to take that into account. For everything that's in our universe that's now going to start presenting itself to us, you can't freak yourself out and go like, oh, don't be stupid. Don't be, I learned not to be closed-minded, put it that way. I'm learning a lot more and I'm very happy. And I used to get not scared. I guess, well, when you're by yourself, you're scared, but you have friends now. And like you said, Mario, you went through it by yourself a year or so, or 2, 3 years ago. I went through it, 6 months ago or 4 months ago. And many people will go through it and they'll see this video 6 months from now and they'll say, hey, I went through it too. And it's a personal thing that they all have to go through. We all have to go through it. And it's an enlightening thing.
Well, I've you were saying that things are going to start presenting themselves to us. I was, like the whole idea of which is an optical illusion, whether you look at the flower of life drawings with one eye or two eyes, and that humans and presumably the rest of the universe sees everything with one eye, that we're the ones that are seeing everything as an optical illusion. And the presence of these ganses is not going to make others present themselves to us. It's us coming out of the cave, so to speak, the allegory of the cave, and seeing things that have been there all along that we just blocked out of our minds or whatever, and so it's more of an awakening for humans rather than others presenting themselves to us. We're going to start noticing things that we didn't notice before, that kind of thing, and that's with the shimmering and all these things, being able to actually feel them, is something. There was a guy, when I was going through this thing, I was like, am I going nuts? There was some guy, it was like November. He had a MagRad power unit, and he was saying, oh, he's getting these terrific results. He was on one of the workshops, and and then he says, and I think it was happening at the time while he was online. He says, my daughter's saying, Daddy, the reactor's talking to me. And it's,
Are you?
Hello,
I
Mario.
guess
It's always it, the best part.
Somehow the universe doesn't want us to hear that part, I guess. Mario, are you there? See, your microphone's open, but maybe we lost your line. Let's see here. Well,
Rick, it's Lee here. Let me run this one by you guys.
sure.
What if you made a carbon GANs out of graphite from lead pencils? So you got your carbon graphite, or you got your carbon GANs in a pot with the GANs water on top, and you got your fish pump air blower blowing air in one side and the hose going out the other side, so you're taking the vapor off the you should be getting vapor plasma coming off. Now you pump this into a second pot, which you've been using for making CO2. So you got the carbon fields inside the second pot, and you put say a graphene plate in the bottom, a plate that's got graphene on it. And I think graphene's a nano coating, and that becomes a seed place for diamonds to start. And I'm thinking you have to up the energy of the carbon fields into probably to get the diamond structure. And I'm just wondering if the fields in that CO2 pot are enough to up the energy of the stuff you're blowing into the pot. Or maybe you got to add another, maybe a reactor or a starship formation on top of this thing to pump some energy back in the pot to make diamonds. Any comments?
Sounds like you're ready for next week's project to show us.
I wish.
Well,
Have we been taught how to make crystals or diamonds yet, or in a structure? I remember a lesson plan, but maybe it was a long time ago.
Keshe has talked about making crystals and so on lately, but Not in terms of the specifics so much, more of the theory and the concepts involved.
Well, when we first started, I remember him talking about how when he would take a nano-coated piece of copper, say 14 gauge wire, and he would nano-coat it and heat, get it hot with caustic on it, and then put it in. He just said it was in a cold solution, so I interpreted it as dry ice in a cooler. So if you took a rod, a 14 gauge nano coated piece of copper, got it as hot as you could get it, dipped it in caustic solution, and then just set it in a cooler that had already had um, dry ice in it, which it would stay as cold as the dry ice would keep the cooler, which would start to crystallize on the piece of copper wire. This was before I experiment, this was just something I kept remembering that one of the experiments that I wanted to try to do. And I never got a chance to do it because I got scared because I had so many experiments going on at one time that I remember him saying that get your get whatever wire, copper coated wire, hot as you can possibly get it. So I interpreted that I was just thinking just to hold it with with a pair of pliers, get my torch, heat it up like a son of a gun, dip it in caustic, and then put it in my little cooler. And I got cooler pitchers, but in the cooler, and then have the dry ice underneath it as cold as possible. I don't know how or you could, I guess, if you wanted to. I'm thinking about how to do it as in a garage because that's the way I do stuff, or in the basement. I'm not in a lab, so those two. He said if you could get it to go fast from hot to cold real fast, the crystallization would start. So I thought, well, but I never had time to try it. So, but that was one of my experiments that I wanted to do. So if anybody wants to try it, or I am going to try it now that I've got things started again.
Yeah, I'm not clear on that. I remember it was mentioned at one point about the heating up of copper wire, and then some people were putting it into snow and cooling it down really quickly. But most of the time when you do that, it tends to flake off the nano coating from the heating. When you heat up copper, it creates that black nano coating. And if you shock it too quickly and cool it down too quickly, it tends to flake off in a layer, and chips come off, kind of thing. And some people complain that will contaminate your GANs material and so on. If you were to make plates that way and try to create the CO2 GANs, you'll get black little chips come off the plates because it's not a tight coating. It tends to be looser, it flakes off. I've done experiments with pennies. I don't know if I have the pictures available. I'll show them if I do have it here. You put a penny on a burner, heat it up, and you end up getting a nano coating on it. But the nano coating flakes off very easily if you were to put the penny into a cold situation. I don't have my photos properly lined up here. I've got the wrong library, and I don't think I've got that. Let me have another look here. Are we here? Oh yeah, there it is.
Do you think the hot cold process like that is a good process or not?
No, I don't think it's a good process for creating the nano coating. I think the hot is good, but it has to be more of a gradual cooling down process. Most of the time when you make crystals, it's not a shock process. It's a gradual accumulation and a gradual process of coating. So,
Yeah. Hi, Rick. Hi, Mark.
hi,
Hi,
Shandor.
everybody.
Hi.
I'd like to mention here that such a specification that to get it as hot as you can, I have a little problem with that because I can't get it as hot as to melt it. It depends on your torch or your heat source.
That's right.
So when you do nano coating by heat, that works fine if you don't overheat it. When you heat a copper wire with a torch flame, you have to follow it to heat it up to the temperature where you see the colors of the copper are changing. And the best is when it is at the color of shiny gold, but not more hot. If you get it hot red, it will nano coat, but it will all flake off immediately after that. It will not be the stable one.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
it's a skill, like the painting uniformly with a paint spray. It
Yeah.
really takes some pieces of copper broken before to make a good one. So that's an art. By the way, I'd like to show you something before the sunshine moves. I made some. I want to see my video somewhere.
Okay, it's black right now.
I have to plug it in.
Ah, okay.
Okay, it will go. I have to plug it into the camera.
Okay, now we
Now
see
it's
something
fine.
there. Yeah.
So I made here some dance collecting things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have here the first harvest. And I'd like to show you something interesting. You see the floating bits here. Actually, the water is on the top, and here in the middle I have some floating bits, and there down I have some bubbles, and I have the GANs.
Yeah.
The CH3. So now I'm spinning the bottle, and those are holding in place. Not those of the bottom, of course, but those who are floating here up. And I'm bouncing it.
Yeah. So
How do you like it?
they stay there. They don't move up and down. They don't float to the surface or to the bottom.
Yeah.
And do you have any salt water in there, or is it just distilled?
Yes, it's what I took it out from these.
Okay.
And here is the next one. This is the CO2. Also some floating flakes. I'm bouncing it a bit to let them move. You see? How do you like that?
So if you were to put the distilled water in, they would probably not do that. They would go to the bottom, I would presume then. It's due to some sort of layering?
All possible. Maybe Archimedes law plays its role here. And this is the copper oxide. Same thing.
Interesting. It's almost like there's a layer of heavier water in there, heavier.
Very good observation, Rick. Very good observation. I see you have been a magician, so you know to see the essence of the things, not the appearances. Actually, what I did, when I collected this, it was quite cloudy, especially the CH3 and the copper oxide. And in order to let it to settle down faster, I put them into the freezer. Usually, if you leave it for 3-5 minutes, it goes to the bottom much faster, but I have forgotten them there for a longer time, for a couple of hours, and all got frozen. I want to say here, the salinity is only 5%, and my freezer is minus 21 centigrades, so even salty water can freeze there. And I put them on the desk here, and by the morning it was melted. And actually, what melts first, it's that part of the water which has more salt in it, and such a big icebergs were floating on the top by 3 a.m. Now it's 8 a.m., so 5 hours ago, and now all has been molten. But that means that it naturally made stratification, layering. So probably I have to the bottom more salty water, and not so salty water in the top because I didn't
Wow.
steal it.
That's really cool. Really cool. That reminds me of a joke I heard a couple of days ago where these guys were stranded in the ocean and on a raft, and they had no fresh water. There was just ocean everywhere they could see, and they knew that if they were to drink the water, they were going to die, and because of the salt, and they were dying of not having any water. So eventually, one of them, in their death throes, decided to try to drink the water, and he drank and went off to the side and just drank and drank and drank, and it turned out to be fresh water. From
Yeah,
the
in
same...
some places it can separate.
That's right, it can
So actually,
separate.
in the deep oceans, you have a bigger salinity than on the top. So you see also different life forms.
Yes, right.
You see how beautiful are these here? I'm spinning the bottle and they hold in place like some little magnets, like a
Right,
compass.
yeah. Now, you haven't shaken the bottle since then. You spun it a bit, but you haven't actually done anything other than let it settle, right?
Yeah. So let's do something with this one. So here are the floating bits. And here is the GANs on the bottom. So I'm going to shake it a little, not too much, because otherwise it will take so much time, and we will see later how it goes down.
Yeah.
If it will be up and down also, but it will take some 1 hour at least or something. So we will come back to that. I put on my YouTube channel a short video about this, and later I will put after shaking how it will be.
I'll be back in a second. I want to show you something like that.
Andor, do you ever take a pH reading on any of your stuff?
pH reading, what for? It's salt water with some gas in it. I'm not much concerned about pH.
No?
No.
Okay.
And I have no pH meter. Another thing, now Mark asked me about pH meter. I have no pH meter, but I have a GammaPix program which measures the radiation. So this works with a camera on the mobile phone. You can download it from the Google Apps. It's a GammaPix.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting, just a second.
You have to cover.
Just a second. Okay. I have to go back to this program. And here are the records. When it shows green, it means it's no radiation or very low levels. And where it gets yellow, it's quite high. You see 287 microsievert per hour. So the application works by counting the pulses through the camera, and for that you have to cover the camera. So I covered with a piece of aluminum foil and 2 layers of black tape. So I put a tape on this front camera. This is I'm using. I can still take photos with the other camera. And what's interesting that suddenly I got such a radiation levels. Look, 376 microsievert, 432 microsieverts, etc. And just out of the blue. And here I made a measurement. This was nearly 1 millisievert per hour. This would be the recommended dose for 1 year, not for 1 hour. It's quite high.
And that came off of your GANs?
No, nothing special near to the GANs. But I had a thought that maybe because I'm a smoker and I have some tobacco here, I bought a tobacco which I never used before. It's a German. It said without additives, without chemical additives. This is what I used to. This is a Virginia. It's a roll your own. I don't want to recommend that to anyone. And first, when I got that one microsievert, 1 millisievert, so 1,000 microsieverts, actually 966, I measured it near to this one. And I did a repeated measurement, and I said, wow, I've got a cheap isotope. Actually, the tobaccos very often have a high content of polonium-210 and lead-210 isotopes. This is a natural process, they say.
Yeah. Well, in the U.S., the tobacco must be grown in radioactive soil by law.
Yes, this is made in Germany, so I don't know whether they imported the raw material from America. Usually, America imports the better tobacco from Europe, but I don't know. But this morning I repeated, and it doesn't measure at all radioactivity. So maybe it happened something here in the environment, not because of my GANs. So I moved far from the GANs. I moved into the other room. I moved into the kitchen, which is, let's say, 6 meters away. And at certain hours, between 250 to 52, also I measured such high radioactivity. It's very strange. You see, this is measuring such every 12 minutes.
Maybe it's from chemtrailing.
Are you close to a cell phone tower?
I have no idea. So first I remarked on March 31st, 16 hours, when I had this in my pocket, and I was outside, but I returned home. We've got a little rain, but after that I came home, and this being in my pocket, it recorded. This is doing really a big job. It's measuring, monitoring constantly. So I can recommend this GammaPix. This was some unclear measurement. And here it should be, you see, here was first time when I noticed something at 16 hours and 19 minutes. It was a 466 microsievert, or 0.466 millisievert per hour. So sometimes I get radiation suddenly, and sometimes not at all. So this is very strange. Are we entering with our solar system approaching the Magellan Cloud, which is radioactive, or what? What the heck happens? So maybe it's a good idea to eventually purchase a reliable one, because this what I have here, it's not calibrated for my camera model, so it may be higher or lower actually, but still it shows a difference. So maybe it's not reliable, the measurement for its volume. It may be plus minus, I don't know, 50% or who knows. But I see such changes, which are very strange. So suddenly in the night it comes some radiation, and then it goes away. And we have no X-ray machine, or nobody is welding in the nighttime.
What about, could a cell phone tower do that, I wonder? Or a modem?
They have no radioactivity. This is measuring actually ionizing radiation.
Do you have a smoke detector in your house?
No. And we have no gas in the house.
Is there a
Smoke detectors have americium, I know.
Do you have a nuclear facility nearby?
It's very strange. So maybe I should contemplate to get a better radiation meter and to get some monitoring about what happens. Because you see, if I think that, oh, maybe it's this one, I put it there, it measures something, then I put something else, it measures something, but it's not from this one, and then it's not from the probe, it's just from the environment, because I measured in the other room also. They didn't drop those. Maybe I have to measure my own lungs. Maybe they are radiating too, or who knows?
Well, that's the thing. Maybe you're measuring your own body because it ends up our bodies are good. If you want to measure
Yes, and that's
radiation, we measure a human body.
about 14, 15, or 20 microsieverts, or 8 microsieverts, but not hundreds of microsieverts.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that the ganses you have reactors going, are giving readings that the device is misreading? That it's
So the device, it counts the photons which go through the camera while the camera is completely obstructed. By the way, I have shaken this before. You remember this to still have the floating pieces, and this which I shaken. So I mixed the different waters. I mixed the salt water with the not salt water, and now it looks different. You see. So I think Archimedes' law has a say into these beautiful things here.
Dando, have you ever tried a application for the Tesla field?
Tesla field?
Yes, there's an application you can get for Tesla.
You mean the magnetical?
Yes.
Yes, unfortunately, that phone has no magnetic detector. This older model has it. This is it needs recharging because its battery it's old.
I've got that on my iPhone.
This is a Galaxy Mini. This has a magnet detector. This new one, I thought it's better, but yes, it's better, but it has no compass function, no magnetic detector or detail detector. So when I'm looking at the Google Maps, I have to guess in which direction is north, and to put it accordingly. It doesn't get into the position by itself.
Okay, I have an Android. That's why.
Yeah, so it depends on the hardware which the Android has. I mean, Android is the operating system, but it needs also a suitable hardware.
Well, it seems to work. I downloaded but I just wondered if those apps work.
I wanted to show, we're looking at his CO2. This is some soap, which is just normal hand soap. I get it unscented, special non-reactive soap. And it's fairly clear, as you can see. So what I did is I put some CO2 GANs in it. And I've let it settle for 2 days. And this is it. It didn't settle.
It doesn't.
Zero settling. Interesting, eh?
That's not a full bottle. It keeps in suspension.
Yes.
So probably you matched their gravitational magnetical fields in balance.
I think that maybe the soap ends up encapsulating the GANs particles so that they end up separating electrically or plasmatically.
Yeah, soap has the property to dissolve in water dirt, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Or foreign matters. So it's very good for making an emulsion. Emulsion is when you shake together, let's say, oil and alcohol, and then you have it mixed.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I thought for sure when I first put it in, it was quite interesting. It formed almost like a mushroom cloud inside, and it started to settle out in like a layer similar to your particles, but all the GANs was like in a layer, probably about here. And then it seemed to just sort of gradually, it didn't all suddenly dissipate into the whole, it was 2 different substances initially. And all I did was I just went like that. I didn't shake it up real hard. I just stirred it a bit like that and went all white, and it stayed that way for the last 2 days. I was amazed.
So it's very good. So if you want to mix GANs to stay mixed with something, you have to add something, an emulsifier, such a tenside.
Yep, and it could be that soap is enough to maybe it only requires a drop of soap or something to allow the CO2 particles to expand out into their full position from each other, their full maximum potential. So
Yes, sure.
it could have interesting effect. If it's for the copper oxide, for example, it could end up with maybe some kind of supercapacitor out of soap. Who knows?
Yeah. By the way, this thing when does not matter now for which reason, but when there is such a different layering, many people have shown things when they have a lot of gas up and a lot of gas down. It depends on what they did with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that means there are some gas conglomerates have a different energy level than the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So GANs is, how to say, a mixture of many
Yeah, and that might be a way that
particles,
we can
if you can
separate.
say particles or plasmas with different properties, different energies. And some with certain energy, the heavier ones go there, the lighter ones go there up. It's a kind of gravitational magnetical positioning also.
Yes, definitely. Maybe that's a way we can separate the CO2 GANs from the zinc oxide GANs.
Yes, Vlad Teodorescu, a Romanian scientist, has shown such interesting things. Actually, he has there are more and more hypotheses after more and more experiments. But my first idea was when he added salty water to the salt water, he added more salt to it.
Mm-hmm.
So he used a higher salt concentration water to wash his GANs. Then he immediately achieved a part going up and a part going down.
Right.
Furthermore, he had other experiments where he had an Erlenmeyer balloon, you know, those conical vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And there he assumed that which goes on the top, because of the effect, the mechanical effect of this angle,
The angle,
maybe
yep.
pushing them, also compacting them, and makes them to stay there for part of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Still, there are many things to learn with that.
Yeah, there's certain, there's a different kind of flask, not the Erlenmeyer, but a similar one that has a certain angle on the sides of the flask and is designed specifically to keep the particles down that way.
So,
Yeah.
may I ask a question?
Certainly.
For both of you, because you're both very smart about this, and as Sandor just said, he added more salt to the solution in order to make it work. And I bought this stuff today at the pool store that actually is supposed to do that. And I'm just wondering how to work with it right now.
Well, that's for pH. That's different than salt content.
Well, the guy at the store said it for the pH. That's what I really want to keep adjusting, because instead of keep adding more salt, because one puts salt in and one takes salt out, and he said that I can control the pH in the water by these two chemicals. And then I don't have to add salt. You know, like you said to me a long time ago, don't let that salt dissipate down too low. So I'm just trying to find.
No, this different issue altogether. The pH is different than the salt content. You've got two different salts there that will change the pH, so you can have the same amount of salts though in the water, and the pH could be radically different. You could have salt water with a pH of 3 and salt water with a pH of 8 or 10 or something, depending what's added to it. If you add acid to salt water, you still have the salts there, but it'll be a low pH. If you add sodium hydroxide to your salt water, you'll have a high pH. So
these additives for pools or for others usually have such salts or oxides which are dissolved. They create different ions, and the ratio of the ions will give what is the pH at the balance. So if you add something like a magnesium carbonate, that's pretty much alkaline.
That's what those two chemicals that he gave me were. So with those two agents, I can keep my GANs production in a perfect pH balance. That's what I'm trying to achieve.
But you're also introducing other materials into your GANs production that shouldn't be in there. That's the whole thing about it. What are those two substances again? One of them was sodium carbonate. It was one of them, right?
Maybe it has a small print.
Sodium bisulfate. So you're introducing sulfur into the combination there. So more sodium and sulfur. And the other one was sodium carbonate, right? Yeah, sodium carbonate. So then you've got a carbonate that it might stay as sodium carbonate. Maybe it'll switch to zinc carbonate or something with your zinc plate, for example. And all of a sudden you're creating a bunch of zinc.
Sodium will not damage much because already you have sodium from the salt.
Right. Yeah, and the
carbonate. Just thinking about this sulfite. Sulfur is maybe not the thing which we want inside.
Right. Some people want the sulfur.
That's for making pH minus. It means to make the pH more acid.
Right.
You can make the pH more acid by adding soda water.
By adding more salt will make it more acidy?
No, soda water.
Soda water. Carbonic acid.
Soda water.
Carbonic acid.
So what if I just mix that sodium bicarbonate?
That will make it more alkaline. So it will increase the pH.
Only if I need it. Though,
you can use baking soda. It's the same. It's actually that sodium carbonate. It's a baking soda.
Well, the only reason why I bought it was, but I just thought it was just a more pure substance. But the second reason why I only bought it was because I thought once I start taking readings of the pH in my GANs production, is each metal going to fluctuate the metal or the pH in the production of the GANs? Like once I put copper and zinc into the salt, is that going to shoot the pH up to 9.5?
Who cares about that?
Well, I care about that because I want to use this in a personal in my system.
I understand. So, are you taking cucumbers?
Cucumbers?
Are you eating cucumbers sometimes?
Do I eat cucumbers? Yes, yeah. I like cucumbers. Yes.
They are alkaline. They are basically alkaline. And do you eat also tomatoes?
Yes.
Those are usually acid.
Yes.
So we eat all kinds of things.
Yes.
And as we have appetite for it, the body needs. And the body knows how to use them.
Yeah, but I'm worried that my system doesn't know that.
Well, wait a minute. Can I come in here a second? My understanding was that the fellows in the Philippines had discovered that by adding CO2 water to your water, or otherwise using the gases, would balance the alkaline and the acidity. That the gas itself is balancing it. You don't need to balance it because you're already getting it balanced as soon as you make CO2.
Yes.
So why are you worrying about balancing the CO2 or your gases that are already going to balance the water by adding artificial things? It's let the gas do its own thing.
Why? I don't have any GANs to do anything with.
Well, but you're making gases. You're talking about you're setting up containers to make gas, and you're worried about the pH. But as soon as you make the gas is going to actually create the balance that it needs. It's going to balance itself. I thought that was the whole point of it, that you don't need to use those chemicals to balance the pH. You have the gas water. The gas itself is doing that.
Basically, we are working with plasma fields, with plasma, and not with chemistry. It's a little bit more than chemistry.
Right. In other words, the gas is a better way to do what you're trying to do by itself. You don't need to do it.
The thing is with the pH is that it'll be mostly dependent on your distilled water that you use to wash the GANs with. The GANs itself won't have any particular pH to it unless it has a bunch of caustic left in it, or some other reason that it would be if you're use tap water and it was way off the scale or something. But
yeah, people used to get alkaline GANs when they forget to wash the copper plates, the
Right.
nano-coated copper plates, after processing them in caustic soda.
Exactly.
So if there are remainings, that's a little quantity, it changes in huge values the pH.
Exactly.
So you
So
have to wash, after you make your nano coating, you have to wash your plates with distilled water.
And
so
same with the GANs, it should be
nasty things, which is the caustic soda.
and the GANs should be washed multiple times to dilute it and to make not dilute the GANs, but to dilute the water and make it more and more distilled and pure that way. And then you should have more or less the pH of the distilled water, which could range. It could be, there's quite a range apparently in distilled water. So you might want to check your distilled water before you even use it. And at that point, you could alter the pH of the distilled water if you're really concerned. Maybe it was way off scale or something, and you wanted to make sure it was more within, I don't know, the body blood pH or something like that, which is very exact, whatever it is, 7.32 or something crazy.
Well, I didn't intend to use the chemicals for any particular purpose. But what I bought them for was in case if I needed to adjust anything at any particular part. I didn't think that they were, well, they can't be toxic because we have everything we need here, and that's part of it. And I'm not going to sit there and be a chemist in it. I understand that part, but in the beginning, if I take readings and I think, like you said, if I got a container that's sitting there at 11.7, how do I get it down? Well, now I understand. Add a little more salt water to it, or add a little bit more to boost it.
Well, the only reason you'd have 11 point something is if you dumped a bunch of caustic into, say your caustic container might have that high of a pH. And the only reason to bring it down would be, I don't know, you're doing some other experiment other than creating the nanomaterials. Because if you bring it down, then it's not going to create the same nano coating that it's there to do. So, let me spotlight that video there of the GANs. And the other thing is, if you're using those, let me just finish while I got this thought here, Shandor. If you're using those chemicals to alter your pH, what you're doing is you're adding the sodium to it, so you're actually changing your salt level radically. And you don't want to be doing that. You want to know what your salt level is and keep it constant, 5%, 10%, or whatever range. You don't want to be adding a bunch of sodium, that sodium carbonate and the other sodium sulfate will add more sodiums to it, make it more salty in effect. So you're changing your salt concentration while you're trying to change the pH and so on. And it could get to be too many variables to play around with there. But I think it's true we should be taking more pH tests and trying to find out how pH affects our GANs and the different changes there. It's one of the variables we aren't keeping a good enough eye on. What are you trying to show us there, Shandor?
Yeah, that just I have to shake it again to happen again. I observed that some GANs bits are going up, some are going down.
Okay, yeah.
Always they make some repositioning. You see, some are going up, and meanwhile some are going down in the same time. You see on the right it's going down.
Yeah, quite quickly too.
Up.
Yeah, almost on the same
always
plane.
There is some motion, some life in between, and it's getting structured, reorganizing. And if you let it still for a longer time, you will find it will make some interesting
Are any of the particles staying at the top, or
structures.
are any of the particles going to the top and staying there?
Actually, I don't see anything staying. They go to the top and then they go to the bottom again.
Right, so it's just a convection current or something, perhaps, that's
Yes.
causing that.
It's possible because now the sun was.
Well, actually, probably what's
I
going
think
on is you've got convection currents because you didn't shake it up that much. You're going to have the salt and the fresh are they're mixing with each other, and they're carrying the particles as the salt goes down and the fresh goes up and so on, from the bottom to the top and top to the bottom.
Yes, possible, and also the temperature is getting to go
Right.
even. This was cold, and now the sun was shining right over the bubbles.
Yeah, yeah.
These are still here, which I didn't shake.
That's great. I like that.
If you don't touch them for a long time, they get structured.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you see here like a scenery of the moon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because it's red, this one is on the Mars. It's getting structured. So there are many interesting things here. So there is still one thing in the CO2 kits, and many I observed that some bubbles are created and they stick always to the walls, to the bottom and to the walls.
And almost always the CO2 kit, not the copper oxide or CH3, correct?
Yes, it's the CO2 kit itself. Only the CO2 kit does that. So the question is it the kit which is pulling carbon?
Hello?
And what's going left, maybe it will be the hydrogen. And this is never on the plates, it's on the walls. We're using plates.
Well, I guess what we would need to determine, is it hydrogen, is it air, or is it oxygen? It's probably one of those three.
Yeah, it's quite a technical challenge how to get
hydrogen
from those tiny bubbles.
Yeah, hydrogen's easy in that if you can get the bubbles to the surface and have a flame there, they should pop. But sometimes oxygen can give a similar effect because it makes the flame increase so much. If it's just air, then it won't have any effect on the flame.
Anyway, it's an interesting thing.
We do know that salt or the CO2 kit will tend to pull air from, or pull CO2 from the air, the ambient atmosphere, into the solution.
Now you see, for the same size of plates, I obtained a different ratio of the gases. Same salinity, just different plates in different containers.
Mm-hmm.
Always copper oxide is a smaller quantity, or it's more compact because it has a stronger gravity. And after I harvested, I said, let's try once with electric current, for which I used a small battery. I don't know exactly how much it's a discharged used battery from a laptop. It's a lithium-ion battery. Maybe it has 3 or 4 volts. So I put in series with that LED. You see light is on. And then after put it into series with LED with purpose to reduce the current to a few milliamps, maybe 10 milliamps or less. So then it goes to the copper plate, and then to the nano-coated copper plate, and the other end, the negative goes to the non-coated copper plate. So it's not a fast process. It's not an electrolysis or not a galvanoplasty, or how to say, but it works. So now I have during the last night, within maybe 8 hours, a quantity which I had in 1 day earlier. But to keep the quality, I'm keeping the current limited with an LED to milliamps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is maybe helpful for the copper GaNs. Or maybe if you are on industrial production of huge, higher quantities, you can test instead of that LED to play with other loads and to increase the voltage or something to give a higher current, just to find the balance when it still brings up this green stuff and not making a reddish thing.
I was thinking we could use regular resistors. I wonder if that if there's a certain value resistor that would work proper.
Yeah.
And we could try different resistors. We could try different batches with either, say, a few ohms resistance right down to the megohm resistance range.
Yes, yes. So, or make a constant current generator from 2 transistors and a resistor. And see the difference, notice the difference of the color. So this is copper oxide, copper CuO2. This is a greenish, and this is more bluish. What's the difference? Here I added a little sugar. So in the salt solution, I added a little sugar. And that makes it to have a different color, and probably this is not so much copper gas, copper oxide gas, but this is a CH4. It's a methane gas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I plan on
And
doing
it's
some
one issue.
experiments with maple sap as the instead of distilled water, and that will have natural sugars in it as well as a few trace elements and so on. It could be a good substance to use as a basic substitute in the GANs creation process.
So this I'm trying to hold it still to show the color difference.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
All right, thank you, Shandor.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I just took my morning tea and now I have to make order in the lab, listening in the background and not much talking. I mute my microphone from now on.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
We have to start wrapping things up here fairly soon, but I'm wondering if anyone else has something to offer here. See, Alex is here. How you doing, Alex? Just dropped all my gear. And okay, so anyone else have something to present or a topic they'd like to bring up? Questions, etc.?
Hi Rick, this is Vivek here.
Hi Vivek, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. How are you?
Good.
Okay, I don't know whether this was brought up earlier on because I came in a little bit later, but a couple of weeks ago, Salama actually told me via text that he took a container that he previously made CO2 GANs in. And this time, what he did was he didn't put in any zinc or copper plates. He simply filled it up with salt water, applied a 3-volt DC to it, and it started producing GANs.
But what were the electrodes he used?
Just normal copper wires.
Right, so it's copper and salt water. And
Yep.
what kind of GANs was produced?
CO2 GANs. He
CO2
used
GANs.
the container which he had previously made CO2 GANs in.
Mm-hmm.
And like Armin showed earlier on, where the container was actually coated with that layer of GANs, and plenty of my own IKEA boxes here are also coated in the same way. So I believe Salama actually had that such a container. All he did was fill it up with salt water, apply 3 volts to it, DC, and it started producing CO2 GANs.
What do we get when we have just a regular container and put 3 volts into it of salt water? I don't know. I haven't done that experiment.
I guess.
I'm
I
just
guess
wondering
that
if
that would be an
produce
electrolysis process.
does that produce something on its own? I'm wondering. Is it the nano-coated container that made the difference, or is it just the process of putting electricity into salt water produces some kind of white substance?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Because if, let's say, he did not put in the electricity and simply left the salt water to stand for a long time, because the container already has the field of CO2, and now we're introducing a medium in which more CO2 GANs can be created. It, I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe it'll take a much longer time, but over time, possibly CO2 GANs could have been produced there without the 3 volts, and maybe it was the process was sped up by the 3 volts.
Quite possibly.
Eventually, if you add electricity, different voltages to salt water, eventually you separate the sodium from the chlorine. It's already separated when you dissolve it into water. You have salt water that, due to electrolysis, it may produce some sodium hydroxide, for instance, or sodium perchlorate, hypochlorite, which again gets in reaction with others, so it has different fields.
And that could look like a white substance as well, like CO2 GANs probably.
That has to react with the other components which are inside. Always consider the totality. What are all the conditions? What else is there? So it's hard to guess.
Yeah, we'd have to do some more controlled experiments with that and find out. That would be interesting. Perhaps that
Yeah,
can
I
be
thought it
done.
was pretty interesting as well, so I thought I'd just throw it out there and
You
see.
know, if you add the caustic soda to sea salt water or to sea water, already you get a precipitate. And there you have so many other things, not just sodium chloride. It depends on the quality of the salt, the purity, what other elements are in. It's quite a complex thing, like life itself. And you see, the present science doesn't explain many things. It just observes the effects, and they do such strange things like this hadron collider. They want to find out the secrets of the creation by pressing together everything with a huge force. It's like if you would like to study how a chicken works, to just compress it and then to look at the leftovers and to guess why the chicken makes eggs.
Yeah, right.
So we have to be more open-eyed and open-minded a bit.
Yeah, I pity the chicken, whoever does that with a chicken.
And now we know about plasma, and we know about fields.
One thing I'm really interested in is how the innovation team in the Philippines is coming along with running a car on pure plasma alone and without any fuel.
Well, that would certainly be the ultimate, and that would be a fun one to play with, actually. I'd like to get into that more.
Yeah, I mean, even in our local context in Singapore, the private car hire thing is really coming on song right now, where more people are using their own private cars for things like Uber and Grab. So, you know, if one could help them as well as the taxi drivers to alleviate a large cost involved, which is fuel, you know, that would be very, very helpful. That would help them to put more food on the table and better quality of life back home.
But what about all the poor people in the tar sands that you're going to put out of business and lose their jobs trying to get oil out of the earth?
They're already out of business, Rick. They just got burned out.
They've been burned out. We've
Yeah,
been burned out
we have
literally from
we have
those jobs anyway. They are a burnout, and they're not they call them high quality jobs only because they're high paying jobs, not because they're necessarily the best job that you want to be doing in your life for a benefit to others and the planet.
Yeah, I mean, we have enough VLCCs and ULCCs worth of crude oil floating around on the high seas right now to satisfy the demand of plastics for decades and centuries to come. So, there's no need for us to drill for more oil, and recycling is another way of doing it. And as per what we are learning in plasma science, we create the appropriate fields and we get the material that we want. So mining is a thing of the past, going by
Yep,
that way.
that's right. It'll be looked at as a primitive, non-cost effective means of getting energy very shortly, I believe.
Not to mention dangerous.
Especially if you're in a burning city. Boy, oh boy, it's amazing that they're still having trouble with fires in that area of Fort McMurray, and apartment building just went up there the other day again. Um, it's amazing when there's, you're talking about 80,000 people to 100,000 people that have been displaced, and only about a half of them are even considering moving back at this point. So it's made a amazing difference to that area, and will be so for many years. They have to adapt and change into different ways of doing things that are more self-sustaining. Basically, they're going to be forced into it in Fort McMurray. So it's interesting how this whole saga of fuels, and maybe it'll actually come to a close due to the effects of fire, which is strange because the main reason I got involved with the Keshe Foundation, or one of the main reasons, is hearing Mr. Keshe say in the early video, the very first video, was it called Keshe 1, Matter and something. It's got to do with the book 1. Anyway, he says that it's time for mankind to stop the burning. And I thought that was very profound, and he could explain how and why we can do that. And here it is now. We've got this city in northern Alberta in Canada that has been or is now virtually destroyed due to burning. And it's enough to affect the production of the oil production in Canada was down to half of its regular production due to this fire and so on. And it's made repercussions through the whole. They're having trouble with some of the gas stations keeping fuel in the stations now because of all this. There's also an unplanned shutdown to one of the refineries at the same time. It's caused a shortage of gas at the same time as all this burning is going on. So it's strange how things come around, and definitely we can see the phasing out of the fossil fuel thing within definitely a few years as the electric vehicles come on strong in their popularity, and the new ones are getting cheaper and cheaper in price, and they've got the savings in fuel alone. It could be in the hundreds of dollars a month for a lot of people. There's so many win-win situations the way things are going that the fossil fuels will be phased out within 5 years, no doubt about it. And we'll all have self-driving electric cars by then. So that's just the way it's going, and looking forward to that day in a way. Other than I like driving, so I'm not sure about getting into a car that has no steering wheel and no brake pedal.
Yeah, I'm not giving up driving anytime soon. I love it too much.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about it. if we're going to go into space, are we going to love that as much? Or are we going to want to come back to good old planet Earth so we can buzz around in our cars and smack into each other and race and do stuff like that? That's kind of the big question. If it's not fun to travel in space, are we going to want to do it? In other words, if you just go into a sort of semi-comatose state, maybe suspended animation or something, and away you go for 10 or 20 years in that suspended animation state without actually experiencing any of the trip, are we going to enjoy that? Or now it seems like the trip is the experience of the trip itself is almost more important than the getting to the other end. And it is more important in many cases. If you're just out for a joyride or a trip in the country or something, you're not so interested in your destination. You're interested in having an enjoyable experience along the way. So is it going to be that way? Can we make that experience enjoyable in space so that we want to continue doing it? Or are we wanting to get back to good old planet Earth as soon as possible? And all the kids are whining, when are we going to get there? When are we going to be home? And, how long is it going to be? Only 4 more years. Just hang on. Or only 4 more millennia. Just take care and just keep waiting. So I guess these are questions that'll come up as we start to get closer to that place of actually being true voyagers in space, which we are now already. But I mean more in vehicles that can handle that sort of situation, other than our own vehicles of our soul vehicle or spirit vehicle, which is profoundly suited up for that adventure. That's what it does best, is be a voyager. It's our physicality that has trouble out in space. I think the rest of it's fine. All right, we'll need to wrap things up here, I think, unless someone has some blockbuster they want to drop out here at the end, which often happens. All the good stuff people save to the end. What about you, Libby? You got any good things you want to show? I'd have to unmute your microphone. I don't want to embarrass you if you're not ready there. Anyway, okay, let's wrap things up for now, I think, and we've covered a few things here. It's been fun. Thanks everybody for participating and showing your stuff. And yeah, that'll be it for Wednesday, June 8th now. Was Tuesday, June 7th, 2016. Keshe Plasma Reactor Group. And thanks once again for everybody for attending. We'll end the live stream now, and